of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good. I'm cold. California's going through a bit of a cold snap right now.
Yeah.
Not to I'm sorry there's other people in the rest of the country who are actually really, really cold right now. And they're kind of going you have no idea what you're talking about, Tim. And you're right, I don't. But it's cold for me, so I'm going to just say it. But yeah, I'm doing good.
Cool. Before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today we'll be discussing chapters 6 and 7 of The Great Hunt, where the Trollocs attack Faldara Keep and chaos ensues. Also, Viren always knows. Chapter 6 is called Dark Prophecy, and the icon is the Party Trolloc.
Rock and Rollock. Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Rand dreams that he is in a one-room farmhouse that is being attacked by Trollocs. He turns to Matt and Perrin, saying that they have to do something. Matt, his ruby-hilted dagger stuck in his chest, tells Rand that it's too late. Perrin, with bloody empty eye sockets, laughs and tells Rand that he's finally gotten rid of them. Padan Fain is dancing and taunting Rand, saying that the battle is never over. The door bursts open and two red Aes Sedai come in, followed by their master, flames visible through the eye openings of his blood-red mask. Baalzamon tells Rand that it is not over between them. Rand awakes in Egwene's room with Nynaeve sitting in a rocking chair knitting and watching over him. He explains that Egwene invited him into the room, and Nynaeve tells him that they will keep him hidden from the Amyrlin seat and the rest of the Aes Sedai. Rand tells her that they won't have to hide him for long. He asks after Egwene, and Nynaeve tells him that she's gone to see Padan Fain again. Rand is a little snippy, but Nynaeve ignores him. She's concerned about the odd behavior of the serving women who seem to be searching for something all over the keep. Rand dismisses this by saying that they wouldn't send women after him. Nynaeve is not so sure, but Rand reiterates that he's leaving as soon as he can find a place where there's no one he can hurt. Nynaeve says that he is ta'veren and that the wheel doesn't seem finished with him yet. She brings up the Dark One, and Rand tells her that Shaitan is dead. The room lurches, and Nynaeve calls him a fool for naming the Dark One, but Rand still insists that he's dead. They argue about it until they're interrupted by alarm bells. Rand is worried about Egwene in the dungeons and rushes to save her. Nynaeve tries to stop him, but he won't listen to her and goes charging through the halls of the women's apartments with his sword. He is causing quite a stir and runs headlong into Swan Sanchi herself. Rand runs on, convinced that the Amyrlin knows about him. When he gets out of the women's apartments, he is shocked to see that there are Trollocs inside the keep. He is saved from Trollocs and a Fade before making it down to the dungeon. The scene he finds when he gets to the guard's room is grisly. The walls are covered in bloody writings, some that he could read and others in Trolloc script. On the inner door, the message is for him. "We will meet again on Toman Head. It is never over, Althor." He grabs some straw from the floor and starts to scrub the message out. Liandrin arrives and demands to know what he's done. He says that he's done nothing and tries to look for Egwene, but Liandrin binds him and attacks him with a power, almost suffocating him. Moraine shows up, stops her, and demands to know what the hell's going on. Rand leaves the Aes Sedai to fight with each other and goes into the cells to look for Egwene. He finds Fain's cell empty and Matt and Egwene unconscious on the floor. Moraine heals Egwene of a head wound and tells Rand that she'll be okay, but she needs to sleep. When Moraine turns to Matt, she says that he's more serious and the dagger is gone. Men arrive and Moraine orders them to take Egwene to her room and Matt to the Amyrlin for healing. Liandrin is having none of it, but Moraine overrules her. Ingtar tells them that the horn was stolen and that the attack was an inside job. There are dark friends in Faldara, and they opened the gates to let the shadow spawn in. Rand asks about the guard on the gates, and Ingtar tells him that Egilmar had the gates closed as soon as he heard about the attack. Rand asks about the earlier order, but Ingtar says that there was no earlier order to close the gates. Rand leaves the dungeon and runs into Lan, who tells him that Moraine had his things returned to his room so he can go back there. He teases Rand about the stir he caused by breaking the rules and running through the women's apartment with a sword. Lan tells him that Moraine had him exempted from the travel ban and he can leave whenever he wants. Rand asks why now and questions Lan about if the earlier order came from Moraine. Lan doesn't know, but advises Rand not to question it and leave. Rand wants to, but not until he knows that Matt and Egwene are going to be okay. Lan tells him that the choice is up to him and walks away.
As far as dream sequences go, this one's not half bad. It's short and kind of to the point, and it's all about Rand being terrified.
Right.
I can't tell if this is a dream shard or just Rand's anxiety getting the best of him. But the most disturbing part of it, at least for me, is that Perrin has gouged out his eyes and holding them out to Rand to show that they're gone now.
Yeah, that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. Ugh.
I don't think it's a dream shard. I think it's just a normal Baalzamon dream.
There's lots of crap going on in my life. I'm stress dream. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I do think that Baalzamon is entering his dream, but I don't think all of the Baalzamon dreams are dream shards. I think that's a different thing.
Fair enough. I agree.
Like, I'm pretty sure the dream shards are where you've got, like, the separate dream world thing happening.
Right. It's very specific stuff where weird, hinky stuff happens.
Yeah, it's like, when it gets really theatrical
yeah.
and crazy, that's when it's a dream shard.
Okay.
And this is just Baalzamon, like, playing with Rand's mind, because that's what he does. So we see Nynaeve sitting in a rocking chair, knitting. And I'm going to call shenanigans on that. I know that knitting and sewing are two different things.
Yeah.
But Nynaeve is a terrible sewer. And that's a basic skill in this society. So I doubt that she would have taken the time to learn to knit. She can't cook. She can't sew. And I don't buy that she's going to be sitting in a rocking chair knitting. Just, nope, not happening.
You're right. It's out of character for her.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
When Rand tells her that it's a bad idea for Egwene to visit Fane, Nynaeve reminds him that Egwene was training to be her assistant Wisdom. Healing is a big part of that, and Nynaeve thinks she visits Fane out of a desire to heal. But I don't think that's actually true. Like, later throughout the series, Egwene doesn't show much inclination towards healing. But right. I do think it's what motivates Nynaeve to justify her not telling Moraine about Egwene's visits.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying there. That's probably what's going on.
I mean, I do think that Egwene is a very compassionate person.
Oh, yeah.
And so healing as part of the job of Wisdom was certainly something that she was into. But I don't think she was training to be Wisdom because she loved healing like Nynaeve does. I think she was training to be Wisdom because she's ambitious and clever. And
absolutely,
there are very limited paths that an ambitious and clever girl in Emond's Field can take. So right. I think that's why Egwene was training to be Wisdom. Not at all the same reason that Nynaeve had.
Nynaeve is troubled by loads of women searching for the keep for something. She even sees Lady Amelisa coming out of a storeroom. This is obviously a result of Leandrin's command to find the three boys for her and keep it secret.
Right.
Rand ignores Nynaeve's concerns, saying that no one would send women to search for him, but he's dead wrong.
Often.
Very often, yes.
I mean, in general, Rand is being really snippy and argumentative at the beginning of this chapter. He's whining about the differences between the men's and women's apartments.
Yeah.
How the women have better decor. How the women get rooms to themselves, but he has to share with Matt and Perrin. How no one comes to turn his bed down. Like, he's being extra sensitive, and he's so dismissive of Nynaeve. He won't even consider what she's trying to tell him. I mean, she's not a fool, and Rand should pay more attention to her.
Totally. You mentioned Matt liking fancy clothes a couple episodes back, and how even though she's always going on about Two Rivers Woolens, Nynaeve also likes fancy clothes, but neither of them will ever admit it.
Right.
I like here how Nynaeve whispers to herself about the dress being a gift, like she's trying to convince herself it's okay to wear it.
Well, this dress is probably the most expensive item that Nynaeve has ever seen.
Yeah, it's got
like,
pearls on it.
If you think about it. Well, okay, so first of all, it's silk. If you think about how a landlocked country like Feldara would get a hold of silk, how expensive that process would be, and then it's embroidered like all over with flowers,
Yep.
and that's a very exacting process. And then there's like seed pearls with all of it. Like, it's very, very expensive. And, you know, as a farm girl from the Two Rivers, I mean, Nynaeve is not only probably never worn something like this, she's never seen something this expensive before.
True. So she's probably just really nervous about it.
Yeah, and she's in awe that someone who she's only known for a month would just give her something this valuable. So yeah, I mean, she's in shock. But I do like that she's excited by it, but she's almost like afraid to wear it, you know? Like, if this can't be happening. It's really cute.
Like when you get something really, really nice for the first time, and then you don't want to use it because you're afraid you're going to lose the newness.
Yeah, you're going to save it for special occasions. And yeah, definitely. Rand is still holding on to the ridiculous notion that he killed the Dark One, despite everyone around him telling him that he's a fool.
Right?
Even after he names the Dark One and the room shakes, because naming the Dark One has real consequences in this world.
Yeah.
He's still insisting that Shaitan is dead. It's like, Rand, get your head out of your ass. Figure it out, man.
Oh, gosh. Rand goes running through the women's apartments, sword in hand. And why? Because he feels the need to save Egwene. Not defend the keep, not fight Shadowspawn, but to save the girl he loves. It's sweet, but charging off without any thought of a plan is bound to lead to some issues. Like being seen by every woman in the keep, including the Armelin seat. Very smooth moon, man.
Yeah. He's not the smartest at the beginning of this book.
No, he's not.
Okay, so I love that when Rand runs into the Amyrlin, Leanne puts herself between them.
Yep.
I think I always see the Keeper as like an executive assistant, but with more authority. But at least in Leanne's case, she's acting more as a bodyguard / Secret Service agent.
Yeah.
She's putting her life on the line trying to protect Swan from a sword-wielding madman. And I've never noticed that before.
You know, I hadn't either. Yeah.
I also really like that when Rand comes against the three Trollocs, he screws up.
Yeah.
Like, he screws up the sword forms, and he almost gets himself killed. If the Shannarian soldiers hadn't shown up, then he'd be toast. And it just makes it more believable that he's not great at everything right away, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, he's really green, so it makes sense that he'd screw up in battle. And I'm really glad that Jordan put that in there.
On the same time, Ingtar has this conversation with Rand that always makes me laugh.
Okay.
While Ingtar tells Rand to go and save Egwene, Rand doesn't want to leave Ingtar alone to face the Fade. The Fade is just standing there. He literally waits for them to stop talking and have this exchange back and forth before the Fade then charges forward with his sword.
Yeah.
It's just comical. Like, this, we went from real life, like, Rand can't, like, use the sword very well, to, we're going to wait for us to have a conversation before the enemy finally comes and attacks us. Right?
Yeah.
You got to hand it to Fane. As far as baddies go, the guy takes pride in his work. I mean, the decapitated heads set up like centerpieces are positioned for maximum creepiness. And he took the time to write messages in blood on the wall too.
Right.
It's just, you know, attention to detail is important.
It is. The scene in the guards room is horrific. The heads are bad enough, but it's the rest of it that really gets me. So I've been listening to Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, and one of the practices that they use is sacred imagination.
Oh, yeah.
Where they, ask their listeners to sort of put themselves into a scene that they read from the book. So with that in mind, like, just listen to how this is described. Bloody lumps of flesh lay scattered through the straw. There was nothing he could recognize as human except the two heads. Some of the pieces looked chewed. And then the writing on the wall is described as blasphemies and obscenities bad enough to make a stable hand or a merchant's guard go pale. Like, this is a lot of really nasty, grisly stuff. And, like, I think there's more in this book than most of the other books. Like, the goriest scene in the series may not necessarily be in this book, but I think we get more occurrences of gore in The Great Hunt than we do most of the other books.
Especially The Eye of the World.
For sure more than The Eye of the World. Yeah. But I think between all of the stuff that goes down when they're chasing after the horn, all of the different scenes that keep coming across, I think they're not the epitome of gore. Like, the goriest, bloodiest scenes in the series don't necessarily happen in the book, but we get more gory scenes in The Great Hunt than we do in other books.
Right. I agree with you there. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like the idea of the floor being scattered with bits of I'm not going to go into more detail.
Yeah.
We're a family friendly show. But yeah, it's yucky.
So Leandrin tries to force Rand to talk when she catches him wiping the messages from the wall.
Right.
He's about to channel when Moraine shows up. Good thing for Rand, because he was about to go nuclear.
I read it that way too. The void formed inside him without him trying. He felt the warmth somewhere and he was desperately stretching to reach it. I think the power was definitely about to explode out of him when Moraine came in.
Yeah, totally.
But let's back up a second and talk about what Leandrin did to him. The book says that icy cold squeezed him from all sides, and he can barely breathe from the pressure of his chest. Frozen needles pricked his brain while Leandrin is commanding him to answer her questions. So is this her rudimentary compulsion trick? Because we know that her trick causes pain. Is this what it feels like, or is this something else?
I want to say it is, because the last time we saw her use this with Lady Amelisa, it was from her point of view, not Lady Amelisa's.
Right. But we will see in the future, I think she's sort of lamenting the fact that it's not smoother, like it causes pain and that sometimes makes it harder or something like that. I know for a fact it causes pain, but I don't know what it does.
Yes, that's absolutely what I think she's doing to him.
And she's trying to compel him to answer her questions?
Right. Because she's still searching them out for the Dark One. She doesn't necessarily know who they are or what's going on. She's just, if she can bring him under compulsion of some sort, then she'll have some kind of control on him.
Mm-hmm. For her little compulsion trick, does she need to have a specific goal in mind? Or can she just have him under general compulsion? Because I'm pretty sure she needs it to be more specific.
I hadn't put much thought into it. I would assume she would need a more specific goal in mind.
It seems like it with the different instances we see where she's doing it. Like with Emily says, she specifically compelled her to search for Rand.
Right.
And get her serving women to search. Well, not just for Rand, but for all three boys. And it seems like she has a very specific command every time she does it. So I don't think she can just put Rand under compulsion and let him loose. I think it needs to be specific.
Hadn't thought of it. I love that when Moraine is confronting Leandrin, Rand is like, you two keep fighting, I'm going to go find anyone.
Right? Like, I'm not getting in the middle of that. I've got other things I want to do.
Peace out.
The other prisoners have lost their minds from whatever they were witness to. One of them hangs himself by his belt, and the other is madly trying to claw his way out through the stone with his bare hands. I don't know what Fane did to them, but they are not okay.
Yeah, like maybe they just have a mental snap or something. Like
it certainly seems that way.
You see something horrific enough, and you just can't deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Rand blames the fact that Matt and Egwene got hurt on himself.
Mm-hmm.
He believes using the Dark One's name as the cause of the attack.
Right.
So on some level, he has figured out that he did not kill the Dark One. And his insistence that he did is just plain stubbornness.
Right. Because Rand isn't actually stupid. He acts like it sometimes, but he's not. He's just stubborn to the point of foolishness,
Yeah.
And he is really good at denial.
He is.
Leandrin reaches down toward Egwene, and Moraine darts ahead of her and basically pushes Leandrin out of the way to get to her first.
Nice.
Moraine doesn't want Leandrin to touch her. But I wonder what Leandrin was going to do. Like, with Moraine right there to see the weaves, she probably couldn't have done anything inappropriate, you know?
Yeah, but maybe she was concerned that...
Wait. Whoever does healing has a kind of affinity with the person that they've healed and can sense them or track them.
Correct.
That's what it is.
Yeah, good call.
I didn't think about that until just this second.
Because if Leandrin had gotten in there and done anything...
Then she would have been able to kind of sense Egwene.
She would have sensed Egwene.
I didn't... Yeah.
Good
That's
call.
exactly why.
Very good call.
Sneaky, Jordan. Sneaky. Okay. Ingtar gives Rand the rundown on everything that happened, including the Dark Friend involvement. Knowing how everything goes down, it's interesting to read not only what he says, but what Rand sees in his countenance. When Ingtar tells him that they lost the horn, Rand sees that suddenly Ingtar's face was no longer angry, but tired and full of pain. He wearily tells Rand that the storeroom was looted. He's sad about the deaths of his friends, and he acts so angry when he tells Rand that there are dark friends in Faldara. And I don't think any of this is a put on.
Oh?
I don't know how much information he had before the attack, but I think he is genuinely distraught over the loss of the horn. I don't think he was in on that part of the plan. And I think that he is tired and weary. That's why he became a Dark Friend in the first place. He is tired of the never-ending battle with the Blight, and he thinks that it's inevitable that humans will lose. He thinks that Shinar switching sides to the Shadow is better than total destruction, like with Melchior. But I think he is really mad about that choice. So I don't think that he's pretending to be angry and disgusted by dark friends in Faldara. I think he is angry and disgusted with himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it just knowing how everything plays out, it's really interesting to see his reaction. He's such a conflicted character.
Yeah. Ingtar talks about Ronan being found dead and says the old man had blood on his dagger. No man can ask for more than that. Shannar's soldiers are hardcore. Like the fact that there's blood on his dagger means that
he went down hard.
Couldn't use a sword. He couldn't use something else. It was hand to hand to the last moment of his life. He was still fighting. That is just hardcore.
Mm-hmm. The two Brown sisters, Varen and Seraphel, are already investigating the scene when Rand leaves. They are in the zone, studying and analyzing, and their detachment creeps Rand out. I just thought that bit was really funny. He's like, nope, I'm out.
Browns being Browns. Yay. So this chapter sets up a lot of really good mysteries, some of which we've already talked about in the last couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, who gave the order to seal the gates? Who let the Trollocs in? Who let Fane out of his cell? What is Moraine up to? I really appreciate how this book hits the ground running and keeps you on your toes from the very first page. This is just a lot of cool stuff going on here. So much more than Eye of the World from the very start.
Yeah, definitely.
That brings us to the end of Chapter 6. Before we get to Chapter 7, here's a word from our sponsors.
Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru is brought to you by Paden Vane's Theatre of the Macabre, where two heads are better than one. Come on down and read the writing on the wall. Paden Vane's Theatre of the Macabre. It's nothing to go to pieces over. Too soon?
That just ain't right. Chapter 7 of The Great Hunt is called Blood Calls Blood, and the icon is the wheel.
Four Aes Sedai, Moraine, Swan, Leanne, and Varen, spend the better part of the night working together to heal Mat as best they can without the dagger. Leanne directs men to carry the litter out and goes with them. Varen says that Mat will not live long without the dagger, months at best. She also warns that the corruption of the dagger will spread if it's not found and contained. Moraine suggests that it makes the most sense to send Mat after the dagger since he's already been affected by it. They agree that the dagger, the horn, and Paden Vane will probably all be found together, and all three must be found soon. After warning her not to mention Mat's condition to her fellow sisters, Swan tries to excuse Varen so that she can have a private word with Moraine, but Varen doesn't leave. Instead, she pulls out her notes from the writings on the dungeon walls and tells them that it might just be taunting, but it could be dark prophecy. She reads her translation and they discuss possible meanings. Varen is digging deep, puzzling everything out, much to the annoyance of the other two. Then Varen drops the bomb that she knows one of the boys Moraine brought with her can channel. Both Moraine and Swan instinctively embrace the source to use against her if necessary. Moraine demands to know why Varen is telling them this instead of ratting them out to the others, and Varen explains that she has puzzled out that he must be the Dragon Reborn. They command her to tell them everything she knows, and she settles in for a very long explanation. We switch to Perrin as he is sneaking in to see Matt in the infirmary. Perrin thinks that Matt doesn't look sick exactly, just really tired, but he smells wrong. He thinks about how before the Trolloc attack, Annalise's serving women found him in the garden and called for Leandra and Sedai to come quickly, but before they could fetch her, the alarm bells had gone off. Matt wakes briefly and groggily tells Perrin that he doesn't remember anything before going back to sleep. Leanne comes back in and catches Perrin. She tells him that he's almost pretty enough to make her wish she was green, but warns him not to disturb her patient. He asks after Matt, and she gives him an Aes Sedai half-truth. He tries to sidestep her and leave, but she grabs his face and examines his eyes. She assesses that he's healthy, but there's no way he was born with those eyes, and he growls at her that they're the only eyes he's ever had. Then she shocks them both by picking her up and gently setting her out of his way before making a hasty exit. Rand is in the room he shares with Matt and Perrin, agonizing over whether or not to leave. He wants to take the opportunity and get out while he can, but he can't bring himself to go without knowing how Matt and Egwene are. Perrin comes in, and he immediately asks after them. Perrin starts to answer, then remembers that he's mad at Rand, and tells him to go see them himself. Rand tries to talk, but Perrin is having none of it. Rand apologizes for acting like a jerk, and it works until he tells Perrin that he still needs to go on alone, and Perrin storms out. Rand is frustrated, but thinks that now that he knows his friends are okay, he can finally leave. Just as he's about to get up, Lan arrives to tell him that it's too late to leave because he's been summoned to the Emerald seat. Lan preps Rand for his meeting, and Rand questions his motives. Lan tells him that he's on Rand's side. Lan trained him, and Rand is going to do him proud. Lan gives him an enameled pin that he had made for Rand with a red eagle of Manetheren on it. Rand tells him that he's just a shepherd from the Two Rivers, and Lan responds that whatever comes, he can face it on his feet. Lan then leads Rand to face the Emerald.
It's interesting that Moraine muses that Matt is not necessary now that the horn is missing. And yet, we don't see her complete her thoughts because she gets interrupted by what's going on around her. But it would be interesting to know the rest of what that thought was. It's like she could sense that Matt was important, but she couldn't say how. Mm-hmm. And as we know, Matt is very important.
Right. Varen clues us in on the deal with the dagger. Quote, "Such a small thing, that dagger," she mused, "but it will corrupt whoever carries it long enough. He who carries it will in turn corrupt those who come in contact with him, and they will corrupt still others, and the hatred and suspicion that destroyed Shadow Logoth, every man and woman's hand turned against every other, will be loose in the world again. Later, we will see Fane have an effect on the people that he's around, corrupting them. This is specifically relevant with Pedronale and Elida."
Right. I am 100% in love with how Varen breaks things down to their basic quantitative measurements.
Right.
Even if they are a horrible, terrible thing. Mm-hmm. Like, she's already trying to figure out how to calculate the spread of the corruption of the dagger as if it was a virus. And she's utterly fascinated and wants to study it for the sake of knowing. Mm-hmm. Like, Moraine thinks to herself, another danger confronts us, and she sounds as if it's a puzzle in a book. At the end of the day, she is a true Brown.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how much of this is dark prophecy and how much is dark friend propaganda.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a mix of both. For example, in the first section, it says, "Daughter of the night, she walks again. The ancient war she yet fights. Her new lover she seeks. Who shall serve her and die, yet serve still? Who shall stand against her coming? The shining walls shall kneel." Some of that is prophetic. The daughter of the night refers to Lanfear,
Totally.
And she does indeed walk again. She still serves the Dark One, and she's searching for the Dragon Reborn because she used to be lovers with LTT before he got together with Ilyena.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce her name, but his wife.
Right.
But like the rest is less prophecy and more propaganda. You know, she wants Rand to serve her, and she gives it the old college try, but he never does. And the Shining Walls, or the Tower, never kneel to her. Like, Masana does a good job of bringing the Tower to its knees, but
Right.
Lanfear has nothing to do with it.
Huh.
So it's like this weird mix of partial prophecy and partial propaganda.
Yeah, the only thing that comes to my mind is it's like dark prophecy with dark commentary. Like,
Right?
like here's the prophecy, and here's what the true believer of the dark would, interpret that as.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. That's an interesting observation. Before we dig into the rest of it, I want to talk about the refrain, blood feeds blood, blood calls blood, blood is, and blood was, and blood shall ever be. Mm-hmm. As a person who grew up in high church ceremonies, in like a Lutheran church and other places like that, this passage kind of reminds me of things that we would recite in church and a call and response kind of setup.
Okay.
Which makes it all that much more creepy for me. Like, we talk about how good Jordan is at writing ceremony and prophecy, and this is just another example of his skill.
Yeah.
It's poetic, and it has a feeling of something sacred to it.
Yeah. The second section says, the man who channels stands alone. He gives his friends for sacrifice. 2 roads before him, one to death beyond dying, one to life eternal. Which will he choose? Which will he choose? What hand shelters, what hand slays? This is most likely referring to Rand. The part about giving his friends for sacrifice is really interesting. I believe that refers to later books when Rand uses everyone he knows as tools for his own purpose.
Yeah.
Like he sends Matt and Perrin off on dangerous missions without much heed to their safety. He convinces Nynaeve to help him cleanse a taint, which could have killed them both.
Right.
You know, he uses the ale as tools. Like, he thinks of them as tools. He's doing what he thinks must be done, and he's not necessarily wrong, but it's not a stretch to say that he's sacrificing his friends.
Right.
Also, the part at the end, what hand shelters, what hand slays, by the time we get to the Gathering Storm, Rand is bug nuts and super dangerous. Like, he's still the dragon, the savior of the world, but he's destructive and murderous, and people are dying in scores.
The next section we have is about Slayer. Quote, Luke came to the mountains of doom. Ism waited in the high passes. The hunt is now begun. The shadow's hounds now course and kill. One did live, one did die, but both are. The time of change has come. Luke, Tigraine's brother, was sent into the Blight by Gitara
Moroso.
Thank you. Isam, Lan's cousin, vanished when he and his mother, who betrayed Malachor, were attacked by Trollocs while on the run. The Dark One melded Isam and Luke together into a new creation, Slayer, who's kind of like the Dark One's assassin?
Kind of, yeah.
To be honest, Slayer is an enigma wrapped in a mystery of a plot convenience.
Yeah. I don't think Slayer is properly explained.
No. I mean, it's a cool concept and a cool idea.
Totally.
I like it as a thing that exists in the story, but I just don't think it was explained very well.
No, definitely not. So the final bit says, the Watchers wait on Tommen Head. The seed of the hammer burns the ancient tree. Death shall sow and summer burn before the great Lord comes. Death shall reap and bodies fail before the great Lord comes. Again the seed slays ancient wrong before the great Lord comes. Now the great Lord comes, now the great Lord comes. So there are 2 things happening in this stanza. First, Varen tells us that there is a community called the Watchers Over the Waves that live on Tommen Head that believe Hawkwing's descendants will return from across the ocean. Hawkwing was known as the Hammer of the Light, and his seed, or his descendants, are the Shanshan, who have come back to reclaim the mainland. A lot of the Great Lord bit feels more like propaganda, but the suburb burn could refer to the unnatural heat that's coming, and the death stuff could refer to the dead walking, which is all on its way.
I never put those two together before. You're right. It probably is.
Yeah, because, I mean, we have this unnaturally long winter, and then it breaks. And then it's just summer for books on end until we get to the Bowl of Winds.
Right.
So, yeah. All of their weather problems. They're always complaining about the weather.
And then the dead do start walking, which gets weird.
Very weird. Yeah. The veil between the real world and, like, the dead world kind of gets lifted and shifted, and things get super strange by the end there.
In kind of cool ways, but very
totally
strange. Yeah. And Varen, in classic Varen style, drops the bombshell that she realizes one of the three boys with Moraine is most likely the Dragon Reborn as well. Sneaky Varen. She stays perfectly calm when Moraine and Siuan embrace the source and confirm her suspicion, even though the other two are wigging out. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty tense moment. The book says Moraine had never before even thought of wielding the power against another Aes Sedai. We live in perilous times, and the world hangs in the balance, and what must be done must be done. It must. Oh, Varen, why did you have to put your nose where it doesn't belong?
When Moraine asks why Varen isn't turning them in, she says that she hadn't even thought of that. She's more interested in studying him. Since they don't want to gentle him, this is a rare opportunity to observe what happens as he progresses with the power and when and how the madness takes him. In true Brown fashion, treason be damned, she just wants to learn.
Right?
I love her so much.
This will come into play later.
Yeah. And I also love that we get a glimpse of the history between these women. Varen has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
She has a touch of gray in her hair, which means that she's very old. When Varen explains a lot of what the prophecy means, Siuan's getting more and more irritated. And Siuan tells her, "Go, Varen. I do not want to become angry with you. I do not want to forget who it was had the cooks leave sweet cakes out at night when I was a novice." And then, when her suspicions are confirmed, Varen says, "Yes, I thought it might be so. Moraine could not do this alone, and who better to help her than her girlhood friend who used to sneak down with her to snitch sweet cakes." Moraine thinks about how much she loved Varen because of their history. When Varen settles down to explain how she puzzled everything out, she tells them that she had her first clue 20 years ago, which means she's been aware of this from the very start. Varen always knows.
Right? Yeah. We switch to Perrin's POV. One of the takeaways from this section is that we see Perrin actually starting to use his new gifts. Mm-hmm. He's already starting to identify smells, and he's already started listening to things that other people can't necessarily hear. Perrin may be very anxious about his new abilities, but he's starting to learn how to use them.
Yeah. And I love the scene between Leanne and Perrin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
First, we see the inkling of her Damani side when she tells him that he's almost pretty enough to make her wish she were green. And we'll see it again in a minute when Rand tells Perrin that she stared me up and down, and then she muttered, "Tall, aren't you? Where were you when I was 16? Or even 30? And then she laughed as if it was all a joke. Leanne is all business most of the time, and so it's fun to see her wild side peek out now and again. And when Perrin picks her up and moves her, it's hilarious. They're both completely shocked.
Yeah.
Despite how huge Perrin is, Leanne can kick his ass 6 ways till Sunday with the power. So neither can believe his daring.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
Yeah. The exchange between Perrin and Rand has just the right amount of angst coming from Perrin and just the right amount of pleading coming from Rand. Like, Rand really does think that he's doing the right thing by alienating his friends. But Perrin is totally right for being upset that Rand is acting like a jerk.
Yeah.
Again, Rand isn't listening to anyone around him, sure that he knows everything. Perrin says that the women are looking for all of them, and Rand insists that no, they're only looking for him. Even when Perrin tells him that he knows Leandrin was looking for him at least, Rand still doubts. Rand apologizes, but I can see why Perrin storms out.
Definitely. Lan is the absolute best in this chapter. I love that he's giving Rand all the instructions for what to do in front of the Amyrlin to stand his ground. He feels responsible for Rand in a way because he trained Rand. Yeah. And so how Rand acts in a small way is a reflection on Lan.
Right. When Lan has the ghost of a smile while Rand is talking about bowing to the Queen of Andor, like the Queen's guards do, I like to think that it's because the kind of bow Rand gave was more familiar than it should have been. Mm-hmm. Like down on his knee, head down, his hand resting on the end of a sword hilt. That's a sign of familiarity. What do you think?
Actually, yeah, I totally agree because to be armed in the presence of a queen or the presence of the Amyrlin is an act of familiarity.
Right.
Especially with your hand actually on the hilt. It's way more familiar than he should be allowed.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. That's definitely part of it. But mostly I think Lan is instructing him to act in ways that will throw the Aes Sedai off balance.
Okay.
They're expecting a shepherd from the middle of nowhere who should be intimidated down to his toenails by an audience with the Amyrlin seat.
True.
Lan says, I'll not have you groveling and sniveling, because that's what they're expecting. Instead, they get Rand acting like a warder with some royal customs thrown in. And it totally works. He comes in like a lion when they expected a lamb, and it throws them all, even though we can't tell through their Aes Sedai comm.
Right.
And I think it's really sweet that Lan gives Rand the Red Eagle of Mantherin pin. Mm. He cares a lot about Rand, and this shows his affection and his respect.
And we have one of my favorite quotes from the whole series that has really stuck with me ever since I started reading these books. There is one rule, above all others, for being a man. Whatever comes, face it on your feet. And this does not just apply for being a man. I mean, the same can apply to anyone trying to become the person that they want to be. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, all you really can do is face whatever life throws at you and not shy away from it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you'll always be successful, but it does mean that you did what you could.
Right.
And that ends chapters 6 and 7 of The Great Hunt. Join us next week for chapters 8 and 9, where Rand is brought before the Amyrlin seat and it's finally time to leave Fal Dara.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts these days. You can leave us a positive review. It would really help us out. You can tweet us at Pod-Thru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com and tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.